Welcome to Commander Central episode 192, and today we'll be looking at our 3 free Commander 2020 preview cards provided by Wizards of the Coast. I'm Dana.
And I'm Max.
Hey Max, how you doing today?
I am doing okay. I have a social distancing, I don't know if I'd call this a benchmark or a success story, but I had to put on jeans yesterday.
Okay, for the first time in how long?
I think I counted 12 days.
So we joke about Max not wearing pants often, but you literally have not been wearing pants.
I literally have been in gym shorts since I work from home now. You know, my top half has to look presentable for any video calls, but no, it's gym shorts literally all day long.
So what did you have to put them on for yesterday?
I had to go grocery shopping.
Sure. I did the same thing actually last night. So I feel your pain having to actually look presentable.
They fit though. They still fit.
Well, that's
so
good.
Happy.
That's good.
All the beer I've been drinking has not made me have to go jean shopping.
I went to get grocery shopping and got home just in time to stream some Commander with the Trekcast and Benny Smith last night.
Yeah, I tuned in for a little bit of that. I thought I nailed this home last week with you, Dana.
the play
so I'm
match.
going to try again today. You gotta use our play match.
Tell you what, I will next week. I think we're playing with Aaron Campbell next week. This show airs on Monday. We're going to record that Tuesday night with her as a plan. I will bust out the Commander Central play mat for you. How's that?
That's fair. I give you credit for at least using one of your show's play mats this week versus your generic one. So it's fair.
And I did win a game with Glissa last night, and I won via my famous Glissa win condition of just making the game last 90 minutes and then looking around and going, everyone's at 8 life. I think I can win this turn, which is basically what I did. You know, I guess that's the win condition in that deck, and I leaned into it.
That, I guess, you really need to figure out a win con for that deck. I know you don't like Torment or...
I was actually thinking that last night. I'm like, man, I just need to put Torment in here, and that's just what it is. So, yeah, possibly.
I mean, Glissa and Brago kind of share the same kind of problem.
Yes, to a degree.
They're very hard to win with, so you need that one thing, like a Torment or an Approach of the Second Sun, just to win the game.
You are not wrong. I
can't play for 4 hours.
Yeah. I was thinking I might throw Torment in, and then I do tend to make a good bit of mana in the deck sometimes. Maybe I'll throw in Helix Pinnacle. And there is Revel and Riches in there too, so maybe I'll just kind of lean a little bit into a few alternate win conditions too. We'll see.
There you go.
Gives me a way to close the game out. It was a good game. It was actually closing it on 2 hours. It was a good game. There was a lot of action back and forth. It wasn't like it was, a boring game where everyone sat there. There was plenty of push and pull, but it was just not one that anyone was able to close out very easily. So if you out there in listener land have managed to get some remote games in and want to tell us about those or tell us about what's going on in your world of quarantine, how would you do that, Max?
You can find us on Twitter by searching CMDR Central. You can find us on Facebook by searching CMDR Central. YouTube, where you can hear this show with all that cool graphics now that Raphael does.
Yeah.
By searching CMDR Central, and pretty much you Google search us, you're probably going to find something. Just don't go 12 pages deep.
Right, yes. And I think we have a couple of contests here that are wrapping up.
Yeah, we do have some contest winners to announce. For the end of February and the month of March, we are giving away the Alayla Artful Provocateur deck donated to the show by patron supporter Zach D. And the winner of that deck is Ian Morrow. So congrats, Ian. I'll reach out to you to get some shipping information, and we'll get that out in the next couple weeks.
Make sure you wipe it down thoroughly on both sides.
It hasn't left the deck box since this whole
COVID
thing
so
kind of
it's probably fine. Okay, well,
I'll
good.
wipe the deck box down, though. I'll do that much.
Thank you.
And then on Twitter, we were giving away that full art altered Marath Will of the Wilds done by local friend of the show, Ben Johnston.
All right.
And the winner of that is Nick Cooper, and he can be found at Slapdash.
All right. Congratulations, Nick Cooper. And as always, we can be found on patreon.com if you would like to support the show.
Yeah, and we actually have quite a few people to say thank you and hello to. So we want to say thank you to Dan Hopkins, Omega Havoc, and Elena Runge.
Thank you all very much. We definitely appreciate it right now when things are tight for a lot of people. So we get it, and the support means a lot, especially right now. So thank you all very, very much. I think that is really all we have before we jump into talking about some cards here. I guess that's not true because we're recording this on Thursday, and 2 hours ago, the actual Ikoria proper spoiler started bouncing in. So maybe we'll quick go over a few things. We found out that there's, we knew it was going to be basically a big monster world with kind of kaiju everywhere. And it has been rumored that there might be some kind of a Godzilla tie-in. That did get confirmed. So some of the big legendary creatures will also have a version of the same card in like a promo version that's named after a, Godzilla world type creature. So there is a Godzilla, there is a Mothra equivalent. So there's multiple of those, essentially the same card with two different names. So what were your thoughts on seeing that, Max?
I do like the kaiju, the Toho incorporated mixture into this set. It's really cool. It's something different. I wasn't really a big fan of Eldraine or even Theros to a degree. I liked Theros. I liked the original Theros, but nothing new really happened in my opinion.
Sure.
The new mechanics in this Ikoria set seem really cool. And I mean, it's just big stompy creatures, and who doesn't like that type of magic sometimes?
So we have, you mentioned the mechanics. We have a couple of them that have been previewed so far. We see that cycling is back, and the way that seems to be working in a lot of cases is when you cycle a card, it does things with counters. You put a death touch counter on a creature, or a flying counter on a creature, or a trample counter on a creature. It's not exclusively that, but that's a lot of what the cycling does. Basically the net result of that is, this is a heavy creature, big beater set, so you get kind of a battle cruiser vibe going on. The problem is, particularly in Standard, if all your creatures are, 8 drops or 9 drops, maybe a lot doesn't happen early in the game, or you get a situation where even if you have some small creatures in your deck, if you don't happen to have drawn them, you're like, all I have is these 8 drops, and I can't cast anything until, turn 8 or whatever. With the cycling giving you those counters, it at least lets you kind of use those creatures as spells if you need to early on. Essentially, I'm going to use this, cycle it to give my creature plus, a death touch counter, for example, or a trample counter or whatever. It's kind of a logical way to allow the battle cruiser style creatures to be also playable when you're not at a point in the game where you have mana to cast battle cruiser type spells. So it's interesting. I was kind of surprised to see there's a gazillion different counters, it looks like, but it should make for an interesting play experience.
The new counter mechanic, the trample counter, the death touch counter, the flying counter, that's super unique. It's it's a counter, so it can be removed.
Yep.
So as I was watching the Ikoria preview show, I saw Evan Irwin of Magic Mike's tweet that Ikoria, more than any set before it, really seems to embrace the digital like never before. Deck building requirements on cards, ability counters, mutating to create a huge string of abilities is easily to be kept up on a digital client. So this Ikoria really feels like it's the first set to be designed with Arena in mind.
That makes sense, actually. That's a good observation. And, it's easy to be kind of like old man shaking your fist at the clouds about it. Like, I want my game to be based on cardboard. The reality is that's not the world we live in anymore. Like, digital is a huge component of this game and all games, but I mean, it's a big part of Magic anymore, and it would just be kind of naive to think they're not going to have that in mind to a degree when they design. So it's different, but like you can either get mad at the change or accept the fact that that's going to be a kind of thing that happens, and I'm just accepting it's what's going to happen.
Yeah, same here. I mean, some of the cards that give the ability counter are pretty cool. Instead of your typical pump spell that gives it +2/+2 and trample until end of turn, that trample now sticks around until that counter is removed or the creature is removed. Yep. That's, in my opinion, a huge improvement because it makes that card a little more valuable.
Right.
Like, cool, I'm giving it to it permanently or pseudo-permanently.
Yeah.
Versus, this is a one-and-done type thing.
And it adds some extra interaction. There are things that, anything that has a counter on it, you can proliferate that counter, or, all creatures will share an ability. There's some interesting interactions that you can embrace with this as well that you couldn't just before with the target creature gets +1/+1 and trample till end of turn. That was a much more difficult thing to kind of share around, maybe with an Odric or something. Just in terms of remembering what has what, this makes it much easier to do those kind of abilities without relying on like just memorizing what has what. So yeah, I like that. We also got to see something called Companion, which resulted in, I think, the first card ever banned in Commander immediately.
It did, yeah, that's true.
That would be Lutri the Spell Chaser, which is a legendary creature, Elemental Otter, which people were kind of upset about losing an Elemental Otter, which I get. The problem there, in the way the companion cards work, They're something that you can play from outside the game, so you start with them in Standard. It would be on your sideboard, I guess, is what it is. But in Commander, They just exist kind of off in the aether. The cards all have a downside. They'll say something like, each card in your deck must have a CMC. I think it's over 3 or under 3, whatever it was.
Over 3.
Over 3 for
3
one
or
of them.
greater, I believe.
So it winds up being almost like a partner card that you can use one time that doesn't count towards your 100 card limit like a partner card does. However, it puts a deck building restriction on your deck as well. So that's the trade-off, right? It's one extra card, unlike partner, but you lose the ability to run some things because of whatever the restriction is. The problem with Lutri was the restriction is each non-land card in your deck has to have a different name. Well, in Commander, that's not a restriction necessarily, aside from, Shadowborn Apostles or Rats or Petitioners. So it wound up being just a free card that you got if you were playing Red and Blue, and I just don't see how there was any option but to ban it. But the mechanic itself will be interesting. We'll see how many of these companion cards are out there and if it's worth bending your whole deck around the chance to run one of them for a one-shot effect. I don't know if it will be, but we'll see.
The Simic one is probably the best one so far that we've seen, the one where everything has to be 3 CMC or greater.
Yes.
That's just easy to do.
Right.
This does put an interesting spin on Rule 0, in my opinion, because if you say, hey, I'm playing this Simic deck and this creature is my companion, it's the one that your deck has to be 3 CMC or higher. This isn't a competitive format, so there isn't a deck list, but
sure.
Do you just trust the person to say, okay, cool,
yeah.
You don't run Sol Ring, or
right.
You don't run Ornithopter, or is it one of those, cool, let me look through your deck to verify?
Yeah, that's true. I would assume I'm already not checking someone's deck to see if they're running 2 copies of Sol Ring, so I guess we're already kind of doing that. But yeah, no, it definitely adds another element there that we're not used to in Commander. The last thing we got is Mutate, which kind of works a bit like the Mimeoplasm.
A little bit, yeah.
If you cast something for Mutate, you basically stack 2 creatures on top of one another, and it has whatever one is on top, I think, is that card, and whatever one is in the bottom, it gets the abilities of it as well.
Yeah, to specify, the card has a Mutate casting cost.
Which is an alternate casting cost.
Yes. It can be mutated to a non-human creature, and then it either goes under or on top of the creature you're mutating it to. And the top card of the pile is the power and toughness, and it gets every ability and keyword for everything underneath it.
So you can have multiple things stacked up in a single Mutate stack.
Correct.
They've kind of experimented with this a little bit in the past in Silver Border to a degree, so this is just a standard/Commander legal implementation of that. That's kind of interesting. And I would bet we mostly see this in Commander showing up on the Commander, but I guess maybe not. Maybe it'll be the kind of keyword that it's on a dozen really good cards and we'll see more of, but it's fun.
I do think we got a glimpse of the Liger. That wasn't legendary, but it did have Mutate because it has double strike, and then whenever it gets mutated, it gives all your other creatures +X or something like that.
And that one's probably playable in an Arabo deck.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, the Mothra one, I guess, didn't have Mutate. There was one that I read it wrong. I thought it said all creatures with flying. Came back with a flying counter on it, Max, and I was like, oh, that's just made for Dramoka. But it wasn't. It was the opposite. Creatures without flying come back. I'm like, oh, man, never mind.
Oh, well.
So yeah, we're day 1 deep in spoilers, and it's been very interesting so far.
Yes, very true.
So, speaking of spoilers, we have 3 cards that, since this is on Monday, they would have been previewed this weekend in a little video that we did that was actually quite fun. And everyone has seen those, so we're going to talk about them in a little more depth here.
Perfect.
Max, what card should we do first?
Let's start with Decoy Gambit.
All right. Why don't you read it to us?
So Decoy Gambit is a rare instant for 2 and a blue. For each opponent, choose up to 1 target creature that player controls, then return that creature to its owner's hand, unless its controller has you draw a card.
So we've seen this a little bit in the past where the card scales up based on the number of players in the game. The problem with that is it also scales down with the number of opponents in the game. So, when you cast this on turn 3 or something, you can bounce some creatures back and have a chance to draw some cards. When the game has came down to a 1v1 situation, maybe towards the end, it's probably less fun to draw and see. What are your thoughts on this card? Do you like it?
I like this card a lot.
Okay.
I think it's very versatile. Early game, you can either bounce some early game threat or you draw some cards. Late game, you're either bouncing that thing that probably is going to kill you or drawing a card. So 3 mana to get rid of a problem or draw a card isn't terrible in my opinion. If it only did one or the other, I don't think this is that great of a card.
Sure.
But the fact that it's one of those, if they don't bounce it, it's a reward system. Either way, you're making out well. You're getting rid of a problem, or you're drawing a card. And I think this is going to be a fun card to play with, I think.
It's definitely one of those things I feel like, because I've seen people talk about, my meta is just me and my 4 friends, and all we play is 5-player games or something. There's definitely places like that where like everyone just plays Sunday night with the same, buddies in someone's basement. And if you always know you're going to be playing in 5-player games, this card becomes way, way better because it scales up then, and you're going to feel like you're significantly going to have a chance to draw 4 cards or bounce 4 things. There's a lot more value there. Conversely, I think if you're playing in a similar meta, it's me and my 2 friends that play every Sunday night in the basement, then you're like, well, it's never going to achieve maximum value, so maybe it feels a little bit worse. So I think there is a little bit of meta consideration there if you are in a really small, tight meta where you play with the same people all of the time. But I don't know if that's most players. I think most players aren't playing like that. So in that case, it just becomes kind of variable. It could be great. It could be less great.
I mean, this is somewhat similar to Leadership Vacuum from Commander 2019.
Mm-hmm.
That's 2 and a blue for an instant. Target player returns each commander they control to the command zone, and you draw a card. So
right.
I think it's a cool play on that card, and I'm probably going to try it in a couple of my decks.
Let's say, you drop this on turn 5 or something, and like I'm going to hit that, and that, and all 3 of your opponents are like, well, no, I don't want to bounce it. It's because I feel like most of the time you're going to choose a target that obviously is the one they don't want to recast, probably the most expensive thing, or something that doesn't have an ETB, or, maybe a token or something that's going to get just blown up if you hit it anyway. So I would guess most of the time they are going to give you the card. It's probably just the most efficient play for most players, meaning it becomes a 3-mana draw 3 that's an instant. And that's a pretty good draw spell.
It's a great draw spell, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just feel like that's what's going to be the choice. And if they don't choose it, or they don't want you to draw a card for whatever reason, you're then again presumably going to be hitting the best creature they have. But let's say, they only have 2 creatures out, and they're like, yeah, I don't care, I don't mind losing it. It's probably still worth it if one person, 2 people give you cards and one person bounces their, grizzly bears. I don't know what it would be, but like they let it bounce from their hand to recast it. That's still pretty good value. You're still, wasting 3 of their mana or whatever or 2 mana in grizzly bear's case to get them to recast it, and you've drawn 2 cards. I don't know. I think it's probably, generally speaking, going to be worth your 3 mana.
Yeah.
And we talked about that turn 10 situation where it's down to you and one person, and they come at you with, some big creature, and you're like, well, I'm going to bounce that, or you can make me draw a card. And they're like, well, draw a card. You can draw that 1 card for 3 mana. At that point in the game, when you have a bunch of mana, there's worse things than just drawing a card. I mean, it's not a good value, but that still doesn't feel entirely dead. There are cards that are literally dead in hand sometimes at points in the game, and 3 mana to draw 1 card is never dead. You can get lucky and hit something else, or I'm just saying there's way worst case scenarios with cards. Are you going to try it in a deck at all?
I think I will.
Okay. I was debating putting it in Talrand. I might try it there.
It's going to make you a Drake and maybe draw you a bunch of cards.
Right. Yeah. And bounce some stuff that's a problem. So
is it better than Into the Royal in that deck?
I don't know if it's better, but one of the things I've been trying to do a little bit lately is not necessarily make a snap judgment about a card. If I'm semi-interested, it's easy to say, well, it's fine, but I don't know if it's good enough. Sometimes you just have to play a card like Nyx Lotus. I think we all agreed probably wasn't going to quite be good enough, but I wanted to try it just to be sure, and for me, I found it wasn't good enough. But I don't regret trying it. I'm glad I gave it a go, because sometimes you have to try the card to realize how it plays. So this is one of the ones I am going to try before I jump to conclusions. Where were you thinking about putting it, in Brago?
I think I'm going to put it in Brago, yeah.
Okay.
I don't need it in Tuvasa. That
Sure.
has enough draw already, and I'd rather just run Beast Within, or I'd rather destroy stuff in that deck versus make something bounce to their hand.
Sure, that makes sense. Should we go to the next one?
Let's do it.
We have Ravenous Gigantotherium. That's a mouthful. And it's 5 green, 7 total for a creature beast. It has Devour 3, which is an old mechanic from Alara Block, I think, originally.
Yes.
As this enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice any number of creatures. This creature enters the battlefield with 3 times that many +1 counters on it. So does that now, I guess I should have verified this before we started talking about it, but I had been under the impression that Devour just meant however many creatures you devoured, you put that many counters on it. So Devour 1 puts a counter, Devour 3 puts 3 on it. This says it enters the battlefield with 3 times that many +1 counters on it. So does that mean if you devour 3 creatures, it comes into play with 9 +1 counters on it? I believe so, correct?
It does. So there's something like Gluttonous Slime that has Devour 1. It reads, that creature enters the battlefield with that many +1/+1 counters on it, because 1 times whatever number you
1 times 1 is
eat. Where something like Marrow Chomper has Devour 2, and that reads, comes into play with twice that many +1/+1 counters on it. So yeah, that would make sense. I mean, Milecloth says the same thing, twice that many counters. And Thromach, I mean, is Devour X, so it's X by X. That's just complicated math.
So after saying Devour 3, there's also some additional text. When Ravenous Gigantotherium enters the battlefield, it deals X damage divided as you choose among up to X target creatures, where X is its power. Each of those creatures deals damage equal to its power to Ravenous Gigantotherium. So if you're playing in some kind of a, token deck or deck where you frequently are sacrificing creatures because you bring them back or have, some kind of added synergy there, you sacrifice 3 things, it comes into play with 9 counters, so it's a 12/12, in which case it deals 12 damage divided any way you choose, and you can probably take out 3-4 threats sometimes, and that's at 3 creatures. If you sacrifice 5 or something, it can do even more. So it's a semi-board wipe stapled to a giant body. That's pretty decent.
That's super decent. And it's up to, so you don't, if this is your only play and there's nothing to destroy or something that's hexproof or is indestructible, you don't need to worry about it.
Yeah. And, because it comes into play with the counters on it, there's added synergy there if you're in a deck that's playing Doubling Season or, Hardened Scales or effects like that. So that's pretty useful. Is this a card you're going to try out anywhere or have any plans for?
I don't really have any. It could go into Grumgully, but it's technically not a human that makes non-humans.
Sure.
But I need more board wipes in that deck, so it might go in it.
This is one I do think I am going to try in my Crash deck. There's a lot of good synergy there. The deck is running Doubling Season and Hardened Scales and things like that, so I do have +1 counter synergy. It comes into play, I'll sacrifice a creature. Theoretically, I'm hoping Crash is out. The counters of the sacrificed creature then get bumped over onto Crash. This thing gets big, kills 1 or 2 of my opponent's creatures, which then put more counters on Crash. Between the +1 counter synergy, because it's a +1 counter deck, and the synergy with it killing stuff and powering up Crash, and my own stuff being sacrificed, and those counters getting bumped to Crash, and if I happen to have a, Corpse Jack Menace or something in play, then there's, I'm doubling counters or Doubling Season or whatever. So I'm going to give it a go there and see what it does. I like the card. It's kind of neat, and I think in decks that have something extra, it's probably worthwhile. I think Decoy Gambit's the kind of card that your deck doesn't need to be doing a special thing to want to try it. I think Gigantotherium, you probably need to be running a very specific deck to care about it, but I just happen to have one where it might work, so I'm going to give it a go.
Perfect.
So last but not least here, we have a card called Nascent Metamorph. Why don't you read this one to us, Max?
Sure. This is a creature shapeshifter for 1 in a blue. It has base power and toughness of 1/1. Whenever Nascent Metamorph attacks or blocks, target opponent reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a creature card. Nascent Metamorph becomes a copy of the card until end of turn. That player puts all cards revealed this way on the bottom of their library in any order.
That's really interesting.
It's so fun. I love this card.
It's really efficient, too. It's only 2 mana for that. And it can become, whatever it becomes is probably better than what it is. I mean, like in Commander, sure, occasionally you're going to be like, oh, I flipped over a Birds of Paradise, so that's unfortunate. But, very frequently it's going to be like, oh, I just turned this into a Scourge of the Throne, or I just turned this into a,
an Eldrazi.
Crater Hoof Behemoth, or an Eldrazi or something.
When we first got our preview cards and we were studying up on them and we made our video, I completely had this card wrong. I thought it was just whoever you're attacking or blocking, that's whose library you hit. But it's anybody's. It's target opponent. Yeah. That's so good. So you don't have to worry about, attacking into the Spellslinger deck when you have the mono green dinosaur deck sitting to your left. You can hit their deck.
Or you can swing into the Spellslinger deck if they're the person you want to deal with, but then pick the the dinosaur deck to, get the reveal from. That's how that works, right? Am I
right? So yeah, you pick any deck, and then it becomes that creature. Yeah, and I had it the reverse. I thought it was only who you are attacking or blocking against. That's the deck you went through.
So having the option to swing into whoever happens to be open, but pick whoever has probably the most creature-heavy deck is a nice little extra bit of power on there, since it lets you not have to be stuck dealing with, like I said, the Spellslinger deck or somebody like that who it's not going to be my Talran deck, for example. It's not going to do you any good. But this lets you pick whoever has the beaters, and that's pretty cool. It's a shapeshifter, so it doesn't have. I when I first saw it, I'm like, oh, does it have Changeling? And it doesn't have Changeling. It's just a shapeshifter. Still, that's a pretty cool card, and it's one of those cards that kind of scales with the strength of the deck you're playing. If you're playing against somebody who just doesn't have a lot of really strong creatures in their deck, this is weaker. If you're playing against that deck that is packing the Crater Hoof or the Pathbreaker Ibex or whatever, this gets a lot scarier. And it's efficient at 2 mana. So are there any plans in your future here to try this one out at all?
I wish I had a deck for this. It doesn't have an ETB, so it's kind of a bust in Brago, but it might be one of those win conditions, if you get lucky enough. This turns into something big, it helps get damage through in that deck. My other blue deck is Tuvasa, and this doesn't say enchantment anywhere on it.
Sure.
So that's a bust. So unfortunately, I don't currently have a deck for this, but I'm really stoked for all the face cards we got to see today, so maybe that'll change.
I am too. That was the big problem. I thought this was the most interesting of the 3 cards we looked at, and it's of the 3, it's the one that I feel like I don't know where I'm going to run it, or don't have a place for it in any of my decks, even to really try it out. I mean, yes, I could jam it into, Talrand or Sphinxes or something just to try it out, but there's nothing it does that really seems like it interacts with those decks in an extra positive way. It's a fun card, but I don't really know where I want to run it if I want to test it out.
Yeah, I definitely see this getting spots in the clone and steel type decks, because everything you reveal gets put on their bottom. So if they set up with a Vampiric Tutor, that gets screwed over. And then whatever they reveal, you revealed their Crater Hoof or something. Oh, that goes on the bottom of your deck now. Mm-hmm. Good luck finding that again.
This feels a little bit like sometimes we see these cards from Commander sets and specifically why it was designed. They put this in there to do this thing. This one feels like this was I have a wild idea. I don't know if it's good or implementable in any single deck, but I think it's cool, so let's put it in a Commander deck. That's what this feels like, is we wanted to do it and we didn't think about whether or not maybe it was useful anywhere, but it's cool, so let's do it. Which is, I liked it. I think that's, I don't mean to be dismissive, quite the opposite. I do enjoy when they do fun things like that.
Right.
So I'm glad to see this card out there, even if I don't have a home for it, or I can't entirely envision what the dream home for it is. 3 cards, Max. Wizards sent us 3 new cards to preview for free from Commander 2020. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's super awesome. Thank you, Wizards. We really appreciate these free preview cards. It kind of validates our work a little bit. I feel like we're doing a good job if we got 3 cards this year.
That's 100% right. I felt like when we got a preview card for the first time, I was like, I can't believe we got a card, even if it was a reprint. And being able to get a new card is, I think, validating is the exact word. It makes me feel like at least the company, to a degree, is recognizing that we've put in a significant amount of time on this, and it does feel very good. I appreciate it. Thank you to Wizards for providing us with these cards. Thank you to our listeners for getting us to the point where Wizards will provide us with brand new cards. That's awesome.
It is.
So thanks to everybody. We're very excited, and I'm looking forward to being able to get back out and interact with actual human beings in the real world and play some of these cards.
Oh.
Hopefully at some point in the not too distant future.
Hopefully maybe July,
We're hoping. I mean, we just got word that Seattle was officially canceled.
Yep.
That's in June. We haven't heard anything on SCG Con, but I guarantee that's going to get canceled. Minneapolis is in mid-July. There's been nothing about that yet, but I'm guessing.
They did say in the announcement with the Seattle cancellation, so the June Magic Fest cancellations, they said they are going to review the July Magic Fest. So Minneapolis, there's 4 of them.
Okay.
Sometime in May. So we should know next month what's going on.
I'm going to be assuming that we will not be seeing Minneapolis or probably Vegas happening. So I guess it's fingers crossed for Milwaukee after that. We'll see. But someday this will all come to maybe 2020 is going to be a bust, and we just have to go to every single Magic Fest possible in 2021. I guess we'll see.
Okay, I'm down for that.
If we got to do it, we'll take one for the team, right?
I can save all my PTO for next year.
There we go. That's true. Well, thank everyone very much one more time for this. We really do appreciate it. You can find me on the Twitter birds at Dana Roach. You can find Max at CMDRCentral_Max. You can find Chris at WiseSquishy1. And you can find our excellent editor, Rafael Garcia, at Ursa Bearwalker. Our podcast theme is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod, licensed via Creative Commons. And one last time, thank you to Wizard of the Coast for hooking us up with these cards. It's a big deal, and we appreciate it. We'll be back next week with a new show on Monday. Till then, I'm Dana.
And I'm Max.